Hi, everyone. Today I want to talk about authentic forgiveness. And what I mean by authentic forgiveness is forgiving from the heart space. Unfortunately, most people in the world are doing forgiveness work based on logic because their forgiveness is coming from this understanding in the conscious mind, which is analytical and logical, that if we can forgive others, then we can heal ourselves. And this is true. But we can't heal ourselves if forgiveness is not coming from the heart space. And for an example, when I work with clients and they're in a hypnotic state and they're reviewing memories from the past where they felt hurt, I ask them if they could forgive this person or people that made them feel bad. Most of the time, they will say, yes, I do. And then my next question is, how did that feel in your heart space when I asked you to forgive? And they said heavy, which means they're not really forgiving. And that's because they were so deeply hurt in their younger version of themselves and didn't have the tools to process the hurt. So now as adults, we have the tools, but we're not really using them because we've been so conditioned to believe that we just have to logically forgive someone for us to heal. And it's not true. We need to come from a deep level of compassion in order to forgive someone we feel has wronged us. So what's actually happening is the reason we have a hard time going into that heart space and deeply forgiving is because on a heartfelt level, we don't really want to forgive them. And that's because they are triggering an old wound where we didn't have the tools. And so what happens is when we get triggered, we go right back to that child part of us that didn't have the resources, we didn't have the knowledge, we didn't have the tools, and we could not fully process the pain we were feeling when somebody made us feel bad. So as an adult, what's happening is we're being triggered and we're starting to feel a sense of disrespect. We're not being honored. Someone's not being kind because they think we're not worthy enough to be respected. We're not worthy enough to be treated kindly. That's how we felt as a child, that we weren't worthy enough to have the people around us treat us kindly. So we accepted that there must be something wrong with us. So as an adult, what's happening is we forgive on this logical level, but in our heart space, we're not having compassion for that other person. We're actually having resentment. And that resentment is because they triggered something within us and we don't know it. We just don't know why we're holding on to that resentment. So if you actually listen to people that say somebody did something to them and they keep talking about it and talking about it and talking about it, it's because they're still holding on to it. They say, oh, I forgave them, but this is what happened. I just need to tell you and blah, blah, blah. It's because they're really trying to still figure out why there's this energetic cord attachment with this other person when they really feel like on a logical level, they've forgiven them. And I've been through it myself where I say, yes, I've forgiven them. And then I find out later that I haven't really forgiven them. And that's because that resentment goes back to, why am I not worthy enough for your respect, for your honor, for your love, for your kindness? And that's really a child part speaking. It's speaking to the person when they were younger because they want to know why they're not worthy. They want to know what's wrong with them because the child part wants to correct it so that they can be loved. As an adult, that's not the way we're processing things. That's not the way we feel things. But we're doing it from a logical level and not from the heart space because the heart space is still feeling the wound of the past. So really true forgiveness comes from going back to that child part and forgiving those that hurt us the first time. Because if we can't do that, then we can't really, truly, honestly, authentically forgive someone that triggers that old wound. Even though we don't realize it's a trigger, it is our brain recalling the memory of the past and calling back how we handled it was what? Through burying it and then holding resentment, holding on to the pain. And that's what we're doing as an adult. So real true forgiveness has to go back to the original wound. Forgive those that hurt you. Forgive those from that child's energy and realize that you don't have to question if you're worthy of their love. You need to know you're worthy of their love. And you need to know on that level, on that memory level, on that child level, that they were only acting out their own internal pain and you were there and they projected onto you. You know this as an adult, but the child needs to know that. So now this begs the question, how do I do that? So my suggestion is work with that child part of you and keep forgiving your own inner child for believing that you weren't worthy of the love, respect, and honor and kindness of those around you, for personalizing their internal pain as if it belonged to you, as if it was who you were, as if you were not worthy of their love. And then talk to that inner child and say, you are worthy of their love. You are a divine child. You just didn't know it at the time. Because if you don't work with those parts of you, then as an adult, you have a hard time truly and authentically forgiving the other people in your life in the now time, because you can't let go of that resentment. That resentment is not about that person now. It's about the past. But when they trigger it, you think it's about them. But then your logical mind says, no, I forgave them. But your inner child says, no, I didn't. That inner child didn't forgive those people in the past. And that's what's showing up. So there is a correlation between the child part that didn't forgive somebody in the past, to who's now in your present life that triggers that. And you say you forgave them, but you didn't. But logically you did. So the reason that you can't fully feel that in your heart space is because that resentment keeps showing up and you think it's about the person in your now time. And it's really that same old resentment and that memory of being disrespected. So it's really a child part in you that's questioning your value again. So this may sound complicated, but it's really not. It's really about you looking at all parts of you. So if you're having a hard time forgiving someone now, just remember that the reason you're having a hard time is because they are causing you to recall a memory where you weren't able to love and honor yourself. And they're triggering that. That's all. They're triggering a time that you were not able to love and honor yourself. So now as an adult, and maybe you've done a lot of healing work, you've done a lot of spiritual work, you've done a lot of internal work, you've done a lot of growth, and you've evolved. Yes, that part of you can forgive. But the reason that you still hold on to what's happening now is because there's a child part in you that has not forgiven the people from the past. And that same feeling of resentment, of pain, of hurt, of unworthiness just seems to show up in that moment that somebody triggered it and you relay it to them. And that causes you to not be able to forgive the person in the now moment. So it still goes back to you realizing that this is strictly a trigger. If you're still holding on to it, you really can't truly forgive. You can't feel it in your heart space. If you don't have compassion for the people in the now moment that are projecting onto you, it's only because the child part in you doesn't understand why it's happening. You do as an adult, but the child part in you doesn't. And that's where the conflict comes in. So true forgiveness, if you really want to forgive the people in your everyday life now that may trigger old wounds, go back to the old wound and heal that, and they won't be able to trigger you. And then there won't be a need for forgiveness because you'll already have that feeling of compassion that you have as an adult without the interference of an old memory, making it seem like this person really, really can hurt you in the now moment, because they really can't hurt you that bad if they can't trigger the old memories when you couldn't process your wounds. As an adult, you can process them. You can find ways to heal your way through it. You can seek out therapy. You can work with others. You can work with community. You could do spiritual work. You didn't have these tools as a child. So if you're getting triggered now and these tools aren't helping, it's only because you're still trying to process some old childhood memory. And that's where you need to do the deep healing work. So I hope this helps. I know a lot of people talk about inner child healing, and it's true. It's very, very powerful, because everything that didn't get processed in childhood is going to get triggered in your adult life, because it still always goes back to feelings of not being respected, not being loved, not being honored, not being seen, not being heard, not being valued. And that's what, as human beings, we are always seeking in this world. It gives us that feeling of safety. And no matter what anybody says, as long as you're in this human body, you are on an unconscious level seeking safety. And the way you seek safety is through knowing that you are accepted in the world, you're being seen, you're being heard, and you're being valued. And the moment that you're triggered to believe that you're not being valued is the moment you're going to start feeling resentment and pain and hurt and sorrow and sadness, and you're just going to hold it in, or you're going to act out. That's what a child would do. So if you're doing that as an adult, it's the child in you making you do it, because it's triggering that old memory that was your go-to strategy, was to either lash out back or to shove it down. But the real healing comes from dissecting what happened, having compassion, realizing human consciousness, and realizing that the person that's making you feel bad now is projecting onto you their internal pain. That's when you can dissect it and analyze it and realize that it's not about you. And you can truly say, I forgive myself in that moment that I thought it was about me. And I'm going to send that person lots of love, because I realized that what they just did was showed me their pain. So if you could realize that, then you've done some real beautiful spiritual growth. But if you're triggered, or if you can't let it go, or you're ruminating about it, or you're shoving it down, or you're acting out, or you're defending yourself, then you're really being pulled back into an old memory. So I hope this makes sense. I am going to focus on this more because I think it's a very important subject, because we need to stop thinking that we have forgiven people when we do it on a logical level. That's not how it's done. It's done from a deep heart space. It comes from this level of compassion where you can actually see that person's pain being projected out onto you. If you don't see it and you're holding resentment, then what they did is what? They triggered a pain inside of you that needs to be healed. And most likely it goes back to childhood, when you were too young, too immature, and didn't have the tools or the cognitive ability to process it. Okay, so that's it for today. And all I want to say is love you and namaste.